Welcome to the channel. Did you know that as of 2025, same-sex marriage is legal in 39 countries, from the Netherlands to Thailand, covering 1 in 5 people worldwide, which should be about 20% of the global population? Today, we're diving into how this global movement started, the battles fought against religion and tradition, and the triumphs that made history. Stick around to find out how love conquered the odds. Europe, 21 countries. 1. Netherlands, 2001. The first country to legalize same-sex marriage. Religious opposition, conservative Christian groups, and political parties strongly oppose the idea, arguing it would undermine traditional marriage. Before legalization, the Netherlands introduced registered partnerships in 1998 as a compromise, but activists continued to push for full marriage rights. Some right-wing parties resisted the bill, and debates in Parliament were intense. However, a progressive coalition government eventually pushed it through. In 2000, the Dutch Parliament passed the bill with a strong majority, and same-sex marriage became legal on April 1, 2001. Second country to legalize same-sex marriage. Faced initial opposition, but granted full rights by 2006 VERS. Initial opposition from religious groups and conservatives, who argued that marriage should remain between a man and a woman. Legal complications. Initially, the 2003 law did not grant adoption rights to same-sex couples. Full equality, including adoption rights, was only granted in 2006. Political negotiations. While Belgium had a strong tradition of liberal policies, debates over marriage rights stalled until a left-leaning coalition government made it a priority. 3. Spain, 2005, passed despite strong Catholic Church opposition. Major backlash from the Catholic Church. Spain is a historically Catholic country, and the Church led nationwide protests against same-sex marriage. Conservative political opposition. The Conservative People's Party, PP, strongly opposed the bill, arguing it was unconstitutional and even challenged it in court. Public resistance. While Spain had progressive regions, many rural areas were deeply conservative, leading to intense social debates. Despite opposition, Spain's socialist government under José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero pushed the bill through, and it became law on July 3, 2005. 4. Norway, 2009. One of the first Scandinavian countries to legalize it. Religious opposition. The Church of Norway was divided, with many clergy members opposing same-sex marriage. Gradual legal progress. Before full marriage equality, Norway introduced registered partnerships in 1993, but full rights took more than a decade to achieve. Public debates. While Norway is generally progressive, debates around adoption rights and church ceremonies slowed the process. 5. Sweden, 2009. Replaced its civil partnership law with full marriage rights. Resistance from religious institutions. The Lutheran Church of Sweden initially resisted the idea, though it later supported same-sex marriage. Legal framework. Sweden had a registered partnership system since 1995, and transitioning to full marriage rights required extensive legal changes. Conservative opposition. Right-wing political groups raised concerns, but ultimately, Sweden's strong history of LGBTQ+ rights helped push the law forward. 6. Portugal, 2010. Overcame opposition from religious groups. Portugal's journey to legalizing same-sex marriage was met with resistance from religious groups, particularly the Catholic Church, which has a strong influence in the country. Despite passing in Parliament, then-President Aníbal Cavaco Silva requested a review by the Constitutional Court, which later upheld the law. While the law granted same-sex couples marriage rights, It initially did not allow them to adopt children, a limitation that was only removed in 2016. 7. Iceland, 2010, passed with full parliamentary support. Iceland had already legalized same-sex civil unions in 1996 and expanded adoption rights in 2006, so by 2006-2010, there was little political resistance. The law was passed unanimously in Parliament, reflecting strong public support. The country's prime minister at the time, Johanna Sigurdardóttir, became one of the first to marry under the new law, setting a powerful example. 8. Denmark, 2012, expanded from registered partnerships to full marriage. Denmark was the first country in the world to introduce registered partnerships for same-sex couples in 1989, but full marriage rights took decades. The major opposition came from religious institutions, particularly the Evangelical Lutheran Church, which is the state church. The law required it to allow same-sex marriages, though clergy members could refuse to officiate individual ceremonies. The final legislation was passed in 2012, granting same-sex couples full marriage equality. 9. France, 2013, saw mass protests before legalization. France faced intense opposition, primarily from conservative political parties and the Catholic Church. The legislation, introduced under President François Hollande, was met with mass protests, some drawing hundreds of thousands of people. The most controversial part of the law was not just marriage, but also the right for same-sex couples to adopt, which critics argued was against traditional family values. Despite these challenges, the bill was ruled constitutional by France's highest court and signed into law. 10th, United Kingdom, 2014 to 2020, legalized gradually across its regions. The legalization process in the UK was complex due to its different jurisdictions. England and Wales legalized same-sex marriage in 2014, followed by Scotland the same year. Northern Ireland faced significant resistance and only legalized it in 2020, after repeated blocks by the Democratic Unionist Party, DUP. Religious opposition, particularly from the Church of England and Catholic leaders, played a major role in delaying the process. Civil partnerships had been available since 2005, but full marriage equality took years to achieve across all regions. 11th Luxembourg, 2015, Prime Minister Xavier Bettel, openly gay, led the reforms. Luxembourg legalized same-sex marriage in June 2014, with the law taking effect in 2015, January 2015. The reform was led by Prime Minister Xavier Bettel, who is openly gay, making Luxembourg one of the few countries where a head of government championed the cause. Unlike many other European nations, Luxembourg faced relatively little resistance from religious institutions. The Roman Catholic Church, under Archbishop Jean-Claude Hollerich, did not actively oppose the law or campaign against it, in contrast to strong church-led opposition seen in countries like France. The bill passed with overwhelming support, 56-4 votes, in the House of Representatives, showing broad political and public backing. 12th, Ireland, 2015, first country to legalize via popular vote. Ireland became the first country in the world to legalize same-sex marriage via a national referendum, held on May 22, 2015. Before legalization, Ireland had deep Catholic influences, and homosexuality was only decriminalized in 1993. The campaign for marriage equality faced strong opposition from conservative and religious groups, who argued that same-sex marriage would weaken traditional family structures. Despite this, the Yes campaign gained widespread support, especially from young voters and expatriates who returned home just to vote. The referendum passed with a 62% majority, marking a significant shift in Ireland's social attitudes. 13. Germany, 2017. Angela Merkel allowed a conscience vote. Germany's road to same-sex marriage was gradual and marked by years of civil unions rather than full marriage rights. Chancellor Angela Merkel, despite personally opposing same-sex marriage, allowed a conscience vote in the Bundestag parliament in June 2017, meaning members of her party could vote freely rather than along party lines. Before this, Germany had strong legal protections for civil unions since 2001, but same-sex couples still lacked full adoption rights and other benefits. The final vote passed with 393 in favor and 226 against, leading to full marriage rights by October 2017. 14. Malta, 2017, one of the most progressive LGBTQ+ countries in Europe. Malta, a deeply Catholic country, faced significant religious opposition to same-sex marriage. The country had already banned conversion therapy and recognized civil unions before full marriage equality. The biggest challenge was overcoming conservative traditions and a strong Catholic influence in Maltese society. However, by 2017, Malta had become one of the most progressive countries in Europe regarding LGBTQ+ rights, passing the marriage law with almost unanimous parliamentary support, 66 to 1 vote. 15. Austria, 2019. Constitutional Court ruled in favor. Austria's legalization of same-sex marriage was the result of a court ruling, not a parliamentary vote. The Austrian Constitutional Court ruled in December 2017 that the existing law, which only allowed civil unions for same-sex couples, was unconstitutional. The government was then required to amend the law by 2019, making Austria one of the few countries where legalization came directly through judicial intervention rather than legislation. Before this, conservative political parties had delayed progress, preferring to maintain civil unions instead of full marriage equality. 16. Switzerland, 2022. Passed by referendum with 64% support. Before legalizing same-sex marriage, Switzerland had civil partnerships since 2007, which granted some legal rights but lacked full equality. The main obstacles were political hesitation and conservative opposition. The issue was put to a public referendum in 2021, where 64.1% voted in favor. Despite this strong support, opponents, primarily religious groups and conservative parties, argued that it would undermine traditional marriage and adoption rights. 17. Slovenia, 2022, overcame previous referendum rejections. Slovenia faced multiple legal and public setbacks before full marriage equality. A 2015 law granting same-sex marriage rights was overturned by a referendum. Before 2022, Slovenia only recognized same-sex partnerships with limited rights, excluding adoption and in vitro fertilization. The turning point came in 2022 when the Constitutional Court ruled that banning same-sex marriage was unconstitutional, leading to legislative changes. 18. Andorra, 2023. Updated civil union law to full marriage. Andorra initially had civil unions with most rights of marriage, except in name. Attempts to pass same-sex marriage laws faced opposition from conservative lawmakers. The resistance was mostly symbolic, as many rights had already been granted to same-sex couples. The final legal change came in 2023 when the government updated civil union laws to grant full marriage equality. 19th. Estonia, 2023. First ex-Soviet country to legalize it. Estonia became the first ex-Soviet country to legalize same-sex marriage, marking a significant shift from its past. While civil partnerships had been recognized since 2016, political and bureaucratic obstacles made them difficult to implement. Opposition stemmed from conservative factions and remnants of Soviet-era attitudes toward LGBTQ+ rights. The final push came from Prime Minister Kaja Kallas, whose government championed the reforms, framing them as a move toward greater European integration and individual freedoms. 20. Greece, 2024. First Orthodox Christian majority country to legalize it. Greece, the first Orthodox Christian majority country to legalize same-sex marriage, faced strong resistance from the Orthodox Church and conservative politicians. Civil partnerships had been legal since 2015, but full marriage rights were delayed due to religious opposition. A landmark decision in 2024 finally granted full equality, reflecting changing social attitudes and government support for LGBTQ+ rights. 21st Liechtenstein, 2025, passed with overwhelming parliamentary support. Liechtenstein had a relatively slow progression toward LGBTQ+ rights. Although registered partnerships were introduced in 2011, full marriage rights were delayed. The main challenges included conservative societal attitudes and limited explicit legal protections against LGBTQ+ discrimination in employment and housing. However, public opinion shifted over time, and Parliament overwhelmingly supported the legalization of same-sex marriage. North America, 5 countries, 22. Canada, 2005, one of the earliest adopters. Before legalization, Canada saw strong opposition, particularly from religious groups and conservative politicians. The government had to navigate legal battles, including court rulings that struck down bans on same-sex marriage in multiple provinces before national legislation was passed. The Civil Marriage Act of 2005 officially recognized same-sex unions nationwide, making Canada one of the first countries to do so. 23rd United States, 2015, legalized nationwide by Supreme Court ruling Obergefell v. Hodges. The U.S. faced prolonged legal battles, religious opposition, and state-level bans before the Supreme Court's landmark, Obergefell v. Hodges ruling in 2015, legalized same-sex marriage nationwide. Prior to this, some states had legalized same-sex marriage, while others had constitutional amendments prohibiting it, creating a divided legal landscape. The ruling was a culmination of years of advocacy and judicial challenges. 24. Mexico, 2022. Became legal nationwide when Tamaulipas, the last state, approved it. Same-sex marriage in Mexico was legalized gradually, as individual states approved it at different times. By 2022, Tamaulipas became the last state to legalize it, making it officially nationwide. Challenges included strong opposition from religious institutions, conservative politicians, and inconsistent legal recognition across states, leading to legal uncertainty for couples. 25. Costa Rica, 2020. First Central American country to legalize. Costa Rica became the first Central American country to legalize same-sex marriage after a landmark ruling by the country's Supreme Court in 2018, which declared the ban unconstitutional and set a deadline for its repeal. Religious groups and conservative politicians attempted to delay or overturn the decision, but public support and international pressure helped push it forward. 26. Cuba, 2022. Approved through a national referendum. Before approving same-sex marriage through a national referendum, Cuba faced unique challenges. Unlike many other Latin American countries, where Catholic opposition played a major role, Cuba's resistance came from deeply ingrained conservative and patriarchal attitudes. The government, despite its past repression of LGBTQ+ individuals, especially in the 1960s and 1970s, gradually shifted its stance. Mariela Castro, daughter of former President Raúl Castro, played a key role in advocating for LGBTQ+ rights, helping to push reforms forward. U.S. influence and increasing international pressure also played a part in advancing rights in Cuba. South America, 6 countries, 27. Argentina, 2010, first country in Latin America to legalize. Argentina became the first country in Latin America to legalize same-sex marriage. But the journey was not easy. The Catholic Church and other conservative groups strongly opposed the reform, arguing that marriage should remain between a man and a woman. However, Argentina had a long history of progressive LGBTQ+ activism, and by the late 2000s, public opinion had shifted significantly in favor of equality. The law passed despite vocal opposition from religious groups, demonstrating Argentina's leadership in LGBTQ+ rights in the region. 28. Brazil, 2013. Supreme Court ruled in favor. In Brazil, activists turned to the courts rather than the legislature to secure marriage equality. The country's Supreme Court ruled in 2011 that same-sex unions should be legally recognized, and in 2013, the National Justice Council extended this ruling to include marriage. However, LGBTQ+ people in Brazil continue to face high levels of violence and discrimination. In recent years, conservative politicians have attempted to roll back LGBTQ+ rights, but the legal recognition of same-sex marriage has remained intact. 29. Uruguay, 2013, passed with broad political support. Uruguay passed same-sex marriage legislation with broad political support, making it one of the most progressive countries in Latin America. Unlike its neighbors, Uruguay faced relatively little opposition, as the country had already implemented progressive LGBTQ+ policies, such as civil unions and adoption rights for same-sex couples. The law passed with strong backing from both the government and civil society. 30. Colombia, 2016. Constitutional Court ruled in favor. Colombia's path to same-sex marriage was led by court rulings rather than legislative action. In 2011, the Constitutional Court ruled that same-sex couples must be given the same rights as heterosexual couples. However, when Congress failed to pass a law guaranteeing marriage equality, the court stepped in again in 2016 and ruled in favor of full legal recognition. Conservative and religious opposition delayed the process, but judicial intervention ultimately ensured equal marriage rights. 31. Ecuador, 2019. Legalized by Constitutional Court ruling. Same-sex marriage was legalized by a Constitutional Court ruling, but the decision was met with resistance, especially in the heavily Catholic country. While the court ruled in favor of equality, some parts of society remained opposed to the change, fearing it would disrupt traditional family structures. The LGBTQ+ community faced opposition from conservative sectors, though many activists celebrated the ruling. 32nd Chile, 2022, overcame years of conservative opposition. Chile faced significant opposition from religious groups and conservative sectors. A 2009 civil union bill failed, and though there was some support for legal recognition of same-sex couples, progress was slow. A key challenge was gaining acceptance in a country with strong Catholic traditions. Eventually, after years of advocacy and growing public support, the marriage equality law passed in 2021, marking a historic step in the country's legal recognition of LGBTQ+ rights. Africa, 1 country, 33. South Africa, 2006. First African nation to legalize, despite cultural resistance. South Africa became the first African country to legalize same-sex marriage, but it faced intense cultural resistance. Many conservative religious and traditional communities in the country strongly opposed the move, with some claiming it was an attack on African values. The legalization was ultimately achieved after significant activism, and the country's constitution, which guarantees equality, was invoked to challenge discriminatory laws. Oceania, 2 countries, 34. New Zealand, 2013, passed with cross-party support. New Zealand faced opposition from conservative religious groups and political parties. However, the country made significant strides in LGBTQ+ rights over the years, leading to broad public support for marriage equality. The law passed with cross-party backing, marking a major victory in the country's progressive stance on LGBTQ+ rights. 35. Australia, 2017. Legalized via a public vote. Australia's journey to same-sex marriage was shaped by a national plebiscite, public vote, in 2017. While public opinion strongly supported marriage equality, the plebiscite itself was controversial, with many arguing that it subjected LGBTQ+ rights to public vote rather than granting them as fundamental human rights. The victory was hard-earned after years of legislative delays, but the law eventually passed, granting full marriage equality across the nation. Asia, 3 countries, 36. Taiwan, 2019. First country in Asia to legalize. Taiwan became the first Asian country to legalize same-sex marriage. Prior to this, LGBTQ+ rights were heavily debated, with significant opposition from conservative and religious groups. However, advocacy from LGBT+ activists and legal battles played a crucial role. Public support, combined with judicial pressure, ultimately led to the landmark 2019 ruling, making Taiwan a leader in LGBTQ+ rights in Asia. 37. Nepal, 2024. Legalized via Supreme Court ruling, though full legislative change is pending. Nepal legalized same-sex marriage following a Supreme Court ruling, though full legislative changes are still pending. LGBTQ+ activists faced opposition from traditional cultural norms and conservative religious groups. While the country had made strides in terms of constitutional rights for LGBTQ+ individuals, legal marriage recognition required additional political effort. The ruling marks a significant step toward equality in a region where LGBTQ+ rights are still a work in progress. 38. Thailand, 2025, first Southeast Asian country to legalize, overcoming conservative resistance. Thailand became the first Southeast Asian country to legalize same-sex marriage after years of advocacy. LGBTQ+ activists faced strong opposition from traditionalist groups, including religious and political figures. However, tireless advocacy and incremental changes in public attitudes culminated in the passing of the law in 2024. It was a historic moment for Thailand's LGBTQ+ community. 39. Antarctica, 2016. Recognized for research personnel under legal jurisdictions of their home countries. Though Antarctica does not have its own laws governing marriage, it recognizes same-sex marriages for personnel under the legal jurisdictions of their home countries. This was made possible due to international collaboration and legal frameworks, where scientists from various countries work in the region. And that's the story so far. Since 2001, 39 countries have said yes to same-sex marriage, proving that love can overcome even the toughest opposition. But the journey's not over. What do you think? Will more nations join the list by 2030? Drop your predictions in the comments. Hit that subscribe button for more global stories. And let's keep celebrating how love wins, one country at a time.